Young people, do you want to be a gangster? Have today's images of living the thug life convinced you that that's the way of life or the cool life for you to choose? That living life on the edge is the way to go? Is living the thug life really what you want? It's your life, it's your future, it's your choice. But can you really stand the rain? Up next inside of Education Matters, Thug Life. We'll be right back. Welcome inside a brand new segment of Education Matters. My name is Donna Moore Westby, your host of Education Matters, where we're connecting you to the world of education one step at a time. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I'd like to say welcome to all of my participants in the Education Matters Summer Camp. We're excited that you joined us today, and we sure hope you will stay with us throughout the entire broadcast. Of course, we'd like to thank the sponsors of Education Matters. Couldn't do it without them, and they are the Will Lou Gray Opportunity School out of West Columbia, saving the lives of our youth in South Carolina. Also, Bryant Insurance Agency, right here also in Aiken, South Carolina. Westby's Products and Services, creator of Don's Seasoning Delight, all-purpose seasoning and marinade. Also, special shouts out to my friends of Education Matters, and they are Betty and Isaac Rucker, Leroy and Teresa Myrick, and Willie and Cynthia Wright, all of Aiken, South Carolina. Thanks so much to all of you for supporting Education Matters, and we sure hope more of you will join the Education Matters team. All right, got a couple of announcements for you today, actually just one. Here is the Education Matters chalkboard reminder, and it is so appropriate and timely. It's not too late to register middle and high school students for the Education Matters Swaggin' Summer Camp. Now, because some of you were a little bit confused on whether or not you have to physically go somewhere, leave your home for the summer camp, you do not. This is a televised summer camp. So all you do is either watch us on ASTV like you're doing now, or watch us via the internet as some of you are doing right now. That's all you have to do. No other materials are necessary. Now, for more information, just go to my website. That is edmat.com. And the very first article on my website is more detailed information about this summer camp. Listen, young people, you have nothing to lose, only information and prizes to gain, because we will have certificates as well as gift certificates for school supplies and even food for our participants. So make sure you register, okay? All right. Now moving to the Education Matters tip of the week. Every week inside of the broadcast, we do provide you with a brand new tip. And actually, again, this is one for our parents and grandparents of high school seniors. I'm actually working on this myself, so I hope it will help you. Here is the tip. Don't forget to send final high school transcripts and or letters of college enrollment to colleges and or those who've awarded your child college scholarships, okay? Why is that important? It is important because for many colleges or foundations, sororities, fraternities, even churches, they need proof of enrollment in order to release those funds to you or the college. And the way they get that is either a combination of that final transcript or an official letter on the college's letterhead from that college. So don't forget to do that. You'll be very upset once it comes time to pay that bill and you don't have all the scholarship dollars you're expecting. That is this week's tip of the week. All right. That sound means, do you know? Yes, you know because you've been watching. It means it's Word of the Week time inside of Education Matters. Every week we provide you with a brand new word, and it's amazing how many new words I find. This one is not new to me, but it might be new to you. Here it is. Ostentatious. Ostentatious. 4-syllable word, it's a long word, somewhat intimidating, but not really once you look at the meaning, okay? Ostentation, ostentatious, is an adjective, and it means showy, pretentious in an effort to impress others, or boastful, okay? And here is this week's sentence. The new millionaire lived an ostentatious life by purchasing the most expensive houses, cars, and jewelry he could find. Pretty soon, that money will be gone, okay? And then he won't be ostentatious anymore. That is this week's Word of the Week. It's a fun word. Practice it, play with it, add it to your vocabulary, of course, so that we may all learn and grow together. After these words from our sponsors, joining me in the studio today is the Deputy Public Defender for Aiken County, Miss Kelly Perkins Brown, and we'll be talking about those actions that just might land you in trouble, even as a minor. We don't want that to happen, okay? We'll be right back.
The Will Gray Opportunity School has been serving the beautiful Midlands of South Carolina since 1921. Our mission has evolved over the years, and we now specialize in helping young people move past their obstacles in order to achieve success. We give students opportunities to lead, to develop social skills, to become active in their communities, and to taste success. Don't settle for less than the absolute best for your life. Contact us today to take the next step in your journey toward success.
Tired of hearing automated answering services when you have questions about auto, home, renters, motorcycle, or life insurance? Call the Bryant Insurance Agency, where you will always receive a representative ready to answer your questions and provide friendly customer service just for you. Call today for a quick quote at 803-642-8505 or visit us at 909 Daugherty Road in Aiken. Takia and her staff are ready to serve you.
When it comes to grilling, I'm the man. Using Dawn Seasoning Delight, I'm the grill master.
My seasoning is available at Kroger, Bi-Lo, Food Line, Region Harvest. Look for it on display in the meat department. Also visit seasoningdelight.com for information and recipes. Dawn Seasoning Delight. It's so good.
Dawn Seasoning Delight is so good.
Welcome back inside of the broadcast. If you're just joining us today, I say welcome to you, and certainly want to give shouts out to all of our participants and those who've registered for the Education Matters Swaggin' Summer Camp. Hopefully you have watched broadcast number 1 already, which talked about Can't Wait to Drive, had some very moving and very graphic videos in there, but certainly it is our prayer that it will help save a life. Today, we're talking about just another important broadcast or topic that could help save your life in somewhat of a different context, either physically or helping to keep you out of prison or jail. Here in the studio with me today is Deputy Public Defender, Miss Kelly Perkins Brown. Welcome inside of the broadcast.
Hey, Donna, it's great to be here. Thank
We're
you.
very excited to have you here. This is my first time meeting you, and already we've been talking about our passion for kids and our passion for making sure they're equipped with knowledge as well as skills so that they can survive in this world today. Give us a little bit of information about what is a public defender.
A public defender is that person that, if you watch a television show, a police procedural, you'll hear those Miranda warnings. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to represent you.
Yes.
In South Carolina, that's what the public defenders are. We're a circuit-based system now that went into effect about 4 years ago. And so every judicial circuit has both a solicitor's office who's charged with prosecuting cases, and then a public defender's office who is charged with defending those people who cannot afford to have an attorney represent them. And that's based generally on the federal indigency guidelines.
Okay.
And so my particular job is to represent the juveniles for Aiken, Bamberg, and Barnwell counties. That's our judicial circuit. We're the second judicial circuit here for South Carolina.
Okay. You brought up a term or two that we're going to cover in just a little bit, particularly juveniles. Our audience for this summer camp are middle and high school students, and what we're going to do, because we have so much information to cover, we have a slide presentation that's going to help us with the flow. But young people, I want you to know, at any moment in time, if you have a question, feel free to give us a call here in the studio. You don't have to state your name if you don't want to. The number is 803-644-2357, or you may text me. I do have my BlackBerry here with me on 803-507-6793, and we'll retag those numbers throughout the broadcast. Again, questions or comments, we're open for them to come through here in the studio today, whether you are a youth participant or if you are an adult. The goal here is to get this information out. So let's start with the first question. What does it mean? Why do we even have to distinguish between age when it comes to the law? Children, juvenile, adult, etc. Why the distinguish? And let's start with our first slide.
Well, and I'll go back one then. All right, children are given special protections under the law in South Carolina, actually under federal law as well. And so when you're talking about what jurisdiction, what court has the authority to hear a criminal case, you're talking about the difference between people's ages. So, for instance, if a person is 17 years old and they are caught stealing from Walmart, shoplifting, that case would be heard in the magistrate's court if it were in the county, or in Aiken City Court as our Walmart is in the city jurisdiction. So that would be in the city court. If they're 16 years old and that crime occurs, it's going to happen in the family court. That's the court that has the jurisdiction to hear all criminal charges for someone who is under the age of 17 or 16 and under.
Okay.
If an offense is more serious, then at 16 or even younger, those children can be tried as adults. I think we're familiar with some of the more egregious media-grabbing headlines, cases such as the Pittman case out of, I think, the Charleston area, where the young person who was, I think, maybe 12 or 13 was charged with murder of his grandparents, and he was tried as an adult. So because of the seriousness of that offense, the state can go through a process called a waiver hearing to have a child waived up into the jurisdiction of General Sessions. What we're here primarily to talk about today, of course, is juvenile cases heard in the family courts. But I think it's very important to note that if you commit a very serious offense, even if you're under the age of 17, you will be tried as an adult, very potentially. And those are charges such as murder, such as more serious charges of criminal sexual conduct, burglary charges, things of that nature can be either waived up if you're as young as 13, 14 years old. If you're 16 years old and some of these more serious crimes occur, there's no chance of being heard in the family court than it is in General Sessions, and they are treated as adults.
One of the reasons why I wanted to have this particular broadcast as a part of our series is, as a school board member, every week, actually daily, we receive incident reports of young people in these ages, middle and high school, those ages that are watching our broadcast today, who are violating some law, and we're going to talk about the different offenses and how they're categorized, and they don't even necessarily realize that they're committing infractions that are against the law. And so your description of even at the age of 12 or 13, you could be prosecuted as an adult. It's very serious, and we need for them to understand that that one moment of indiscretion, that one bad decision, might be a decision that can be very difficult to impossible sometimes to recover from.
That's absolutely right, Donna. And one of the things that's so troubling is we know that studies show that children's brains don't develop completely to be able to make good, rational decisions until, I think one study I've read says even until close to age 25, before someone,
my goodness. Oh, Lord.
I know, before someone can really make a good, rational decision about, essentially cause and effect of decisions. And that's why it's so important to know what you're going to do in any kind of situation before you get into it.
Yes.
Situations like if your friends go to the store with you and they decide to shoplift, if you're with them and you're participating, even if you're just being the lookout,
Yes.
you may as well have taken that pair of earrings and put it in your own purse.
That's right.
Because that accessory liability, that hand of one, the hand of all, is going to get you. And if you don't know ahead of time how you're going to react in that situation, you may very well make the wrong decision.
That's right. And for some of our kids, just knowing what the consequences are is enough for them not to go down that path. And that's one of the effects we're hoping will happen here today, is by showing our young people what the consequences are. Maybe they'll be able to say for themselves, you know what, I better not do that. Or you think twice about it, even in the types of friends they decide to choose and hang around with.
That's right. There's a very good reason why your mother says you need to pick your friends carefully.
Yes.
Because your friends can get you in a whole lot of trouble. And
That's
I
right.
see it week after week in the family court with the children that I represent.
Well, listen, there are a lot of our young people today, and I know, because to a certain degree I had a little bit of it, just about everybody does, where you feel like you can't wait to become an adult. And on the slide where we've entitled, So You Think You're Ready to Be an Adult, let's talk about age of majority and what that actually means as it pertains to the law.
As it pertains to the law, age of majority can mean different things depending on the context in which you're talking. Whether you're talking criminal liability, civil liability, when you can leave the house on your own, or when your parents can decide to kick you out of the house
Okay.
if you're not towing the line like you're supposed to.
All right.
And that age is different. I think most people are familiar with the concept of you become an adult when you turn 18. And that's true mostly. As you know, age of majority is the age defined by law at which a person gains all the rights and responsibilities that come with being an adult. The major exception to that, of course, being you cannot possess or purchase an alcoholic beverage until you turn the age of 21.
Yes.
And that's specific in the that's a constitutional distinction there. If you're accused of violating a criminal law and you're at least 17 years old, or as we talked about before, 16 for certain crimes, you'll be treated as an adult. If you're the age of 17, status offenses no longer come into play. So if you, for example, leave the home without the permission of your parents, and I always really hate to talk about this because I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but there's a gray area with 17-year-olds where your parents can't pick up the phone and call the police to pick you up and bring you home at 17, but if a court hasn't told them that it's okay to put you out at 17, they also can't, they can get in trouble if they don't support you and give you the basic necessities of life until you turn 18.
Well, this is a very sticky topic, because for parents who are trying to instill discipline in their children and do the right thing, if they have a child that's rebellious and doesn't want to listen, is incorrigible, I believe is a word that's used, totally disrespectful, if you as a parent take matters in your own hand, as we have just seen in the news very recently with a very prominent pastor that is on television, then it could be viewed as you're being abusive to this child, when in actuality you're trying as a parent to keep these kids from entering the penal system by instilling discipline. It's almost like a catch-22. How does that balance out?
Well, that's a very good question. The first thing I would say is, unfortunately, and I don't know the particular situation that you're just referring to, the discipline of children has to start very early.
Yes, I'm going to ring my bell on that. Exactly.
If you wait until your kid is, 13 or 14 years old to try to start setting those limits and setting those boundaries, that's never going to work.
Yes.
Those limits and those boundaries have to be in place from the beginning. But as a parent, there are resources out there. There are places that they can go to get some assistance. Our local Department of Juvenile Justice has a list of resources on hand to help parents know where to go, things that they can do to get to that step before having to call the law or having to call the police in. Because parents, I will tell you, once you get the law involved in your home life, you've got them involved in your home life. And so if your child is doing things that could be a criminal offense, all too often we also see a parent calls the police as maybe their first call, maybe as their last resort, but then they get very mad at law enforcement when the law enforcement officers takes that report, sends that case to the solicitor's office, and their child ends up in the judicial system because of a call that was made.
Right.
So a parent has to be prepared for a case to go from start to finish in the judicial system if they pick up that phone and call. And I'm not saying not to do that, because there are times when that has to happen.
Right.
And as the defense attorney, I know that there are times when that has to happen. Incorrigibility is a status offense. We're going to talk about the difference between status and non-status offenses.
Before we do that, since we're on the subject of parents, I want our young people to also think that when you make a decision to engage in certain behaviors, that it doesn't just impact you. By law, it could also impact your parents. Let's educate our young people on that.
That's right. Your parents can get in trouble for the things that you do, and this slide that we have prepared on this touches on that. Your parents have to make an effort to keep you from breaking the law. They have to make sure that they have to make every effort, for instance, to make you go to school, to enroll you in school, to provide, to help you do the things that they need to get you in school. But your parents can be held liable for your wrongful actions. For instance, if a young person steals something and ends up going to court, and restitution is ordered, and restitution being, the money, for instance, that makes a person whole. Restitution can be one of your words for the week, sometime soon.
Good.
But for instance, if someone breaks into a car and steals a GPS and then it's not recovered, the money that it would take to replace that, ultimately, while the child is ordered to pay that, ultimately it's the parent's responsibility to pay that as well. The law makes the parent liable just as much as the child liable for paying that money back.
All right, that's quite interesting. What was also intriguing is that very last bullet on that slide. Let's address that, because I think there's definitely some misunderstanding about what a parent can and cannot do with an incorrigible child. Discuss that last bullet for me.
Well, essentially, if a child is 17 years old and there's a record of being incorrigible, which means being beyond the control of the parent, they can petition the court essentially to have the child emancipated. And I don't deal with this day in and day out because once a child becomes 17, they're no longer in the juvenile system and I wouldn't represent them. But there is a provision in the law by which a parent can go to the family court and say, I just can't be held responsible any longer. But what parents need to understand is there is that process that they have to go through. And you can't just lock the door on your kid and not allow them to come home. You can't just kick them out until they turn 18 because the parent can be charged with a criminal offense if that were to happen, if you don't go through the proper procedures first.
Oh my goodness gracious, you hear that? Parents, you're learning as well. And young people, I hope you're taking all of this in. Joining me in the studio today is Deputy Public Defender, Ms. Kelly Perkins Brown. After we hear from our sponsors, we'll get to exactly what you're wanting to know. Well, what can I do? What offenses will bring trouble to me? We're going to talk about that in just a minute. You're inside of Education Matters. My name is Donna Moore Westby. We'll be right back.
I lead a busy life, but I still have to make sure my family eats right. And everybody loves Dawn's Seasoning Delight. I use Dawn's on meats and vegetables. It's healthy, tastes great, and it's simple to use. It's like having a chef in a bottle.
My seasoning is available at Kroger, Bilo, Food Line Reads and Harvest. Look for it on display in the meat department. Also visit seasoningdelight.com for information and recipes. Dawn's Seasoning Delight. It's so good.
All right, young people, are you a baller, shot caller? Are you a student athlete with aspirations of playing at the collegiate level? Well, next time inside of Education Matters, we'll talk about those things every student athlete needs to know. You don't want to miss it. It can mean the difference between you playing at the collegiate level and your dreams stopping at high school. Don't miss it. Next time inside of Education Matters with me, Donna Moore Westby, right here on ASTV, Channel 95.
Can we leave now? Chelsea, you can't drive. I'll be fine. Guys, get me. Let's go. Woo! Yeah, let's go, guys. Woo! Wait, Chelsea, are you sure you're okay to drive? I'm fine. Are you sure? I'm fine. All right.
Welcome back inside of the broadcast. We do want to remind you that the phone line is open as well as my cell phone for text messages, receiving your questions or comments today. The phone number is 803-644-2357, or to text in your comments or questions, 803-507-6793. Now, Miss Perkins Brown, let's get to the cases. This is the crux of what we want our young people want to get across to them today. What are the different types of offenses?
Well, there are two major categories of cases, two basic categories of cases that come before the juvenile courts in South Carolina. Status offenses or criminal offenses. A status offense is one that is an offense that is not a crime if committed by an adult. So if a person who is 17 years old doesn't go to school, for instance, that's not a criminal offense. There's actually a very little known law on the books regarding, I think it's playing pool in a public hall. That is actually illegal if you're under the age of 17.
That's an actual law in
That's
the
an
books?
actual law in the books.
Wow.
That would be an example of a status offense.
Okay.
If you're 17 and you go to the pool hall and rack them up, you're not getting in any trouble. But apparently, if you're younger than that, it's still on the books otherwise.
Okay.
Running away from home, incorrigibility, which we touched on a good bit in the last segment. Those would be examples of status offenses.
Okay.
Criminal offenses would then be anything that is a criminal offense. You know, whether stealing from Walmart is a crime, whether you're 13 years old and you do it, or you're 30 years old and you do it. It's a crime either way.
Now I want to spend a little bit more time on missing school, which is called truancy.
That's right.
Give us a little bit more detail on that, because I don't think our children realize that that is actually an offense. It is against the law. Talk about that.
That's right. And until I became a public defender 14 years ago and started dealing with juveniles, I thought the truant officer was one of those things that was just from, the Little Rascals show. I didn't realize that there were actually, school attendance officers is what they're commonly referred to. But if you don't go to school, it is the law in South Carolina that every child between the ages of 5 and 17 attend school, whether it's public school, private school, or an approved homeschooling program. And that's an important distinction. A homeschooling program has to be approved. A parent can't just decide, I'm going to keep my kid home and teach them at home without falling under the guidelines that are set out in the law. If you don't attend school often enough without excuse, then the school attendance officers start getting involved with you and your family. They first start with intervention plans to try to figure out, why is the child not coming to school? Is there anything that the school can do to help that? Are there community resources we can put a family in touch with in order to help with that? And then only after those plans have been put into place and a child is still not attending school, then the school district, through their contracted attorney, does a petition to the family court to put the child, if appropriate, and the parents or guardians under the school attendance order. At that point, if the child still does not attend school, then the parents and possibly the child can be found in contempt of that school attendance order, and that contempt action then brings the child into potentially being adjudicated delinquent by the family court and then subject to the dispositional powers of the family court.
We're not talking about when a child is sick and happens to be sick for a week, and then the next week they have death in the family and they're out. We're not talking about those type of things. At what point does a truant officer get involved? After the third unexcused absence? Is there a set number?
I believe the regulations call for, and it's been a while since I've looked specifically at the regulations, but every child is essentially given 10 unexcused absences by the school before bad things will happen, so to speak. I've heard a judge tell kids over and over, you have your 10, you've already used your 10, and now you have to attend all day every day. We're talking unexcused absences, and I believe it's after around 5 unexcused absences that the school attendance officer is going to take note of what's going on. After 10 unexcused absences, then a child is going to be considered potentially chronically truant or habitually truant, and then things come into place. If your child goes to school with a note excused from the doctor, that's an excused absence. That's not going to count in these numbers. If you have a funeral, that's an excused absence. Things of that nature. So we're not talking excused absences.
So we're basically talking about willful acts of trying to stay away from school, those types of, deliberate behaviors of just not wanting to be there and just staying out.
That's right.
Okay.
And for the most part, what we're talking about with our audience, here, particularly for your summer camp, these middle and high school students, we're talking about kids who are cutting school.
Yes.
We're talking about kids who are cutting individual classes. As one parent put it, they drop them off at the front door and the kid sneaks out the back door and doesn't go. Or sometimes we're talking about kids who tell their parents, well, I don't feel good, and the parents just let them stay home. The parents aren't controlling the situation enough to say, gee, I'm sorry you have a headache, but you still have to go to school today.
That's right. And also, what it does is, as parents, and I'm a parent myself, if we are supporting those types of behaviors, then what in the world you think they're going to do when they become an adult and have to work on a job, and the job doesn't give them excuse days for being sick, or if you're not there, you don't get paid. So all of those types of behaviors that are reinforced as a child, they will trickle into adulthood. So we can either teach them good habits or bad ones.
That's right. I have come to understand, and I've told young people this over the years, that school isn't just about training a child for adulthood by teaching reading and writing, arithmetic, those 3 R's as we used to call them.
Yes.
You're learning how to get along with people. You're learning how to follow rules. You're learning how to be there.
Respect authority.
Respect authority. Yeah. Be there when you don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I've heard way too many times this concept of the teacher or the principal hasn't earned my respect. That respect is there because of the role that somebody's in. When you're working out in the real world, you may not always like your boss, although I love my boss currently, I have to say.
Must say that.
Have to put that plug in there. But you may not always agree with the decisions that are made or the things that you're told to do.
Right.
If you want to keep your job, you have to do them anyways.
That's right.
You have to get up and go to work, even if you maybe don't feel 100% that day. You still have to be here.
Yes.
And those are the things that are just as valuable that you're learning in school as much as the academic things that you're learning.
Exactly. Wonderful points. Let's move on now to the criminal offenses. And I know there are some young people watching today who at this very moment in time say, this is not for me. I go to school, I listen to my parents, I haven't done any of those bad things. And if that's you, great, let's keep it up. But there is such a thing called puberty.
And peer pressure.
And peer pressure. And so we want to educate you on what could happen when certain actions are exhibited. So let's dig deep, because I know you wanted to get to a particular offense, and we spend some time on that.
That's right. When you're talking criminal offenses, we're talking offenses that are illegal as defined either by statute or common law. And everyone knows that stealing is wrong. Yeah. Everyone knows that robbery or burglary and larceny, things like that, possessing illegal drugs, those are wrong. Those are criminal offenses. And a lot of these things, but what kids may not understand is, for instance, disturbing the schools, disorderly conduct, fighting in school. Those things can land you in juvenile court.
Disturbing school is against the law. So when you go into the class and you decide that you're not going to respect your teacher and you're going to create a scene or whatever the case may be, and you're stopping the learning process, guess what? You could be cited for breaking the law.
That's right. That's right, Donna. And I see that quite often. And across the state, disturbing schools is one of the top level, is one of the top offenses as far as number of times it's cited in the family courts in the state of South Carolina. Because when fights happen at school, when disturbances happen at school, the schools, for good or for bad, are calling law enforcement to come in and deal with these situations. So parents, situations that may have been handled within the schools back in your time, law enforcement is now coming in to deal with that fight that happens on the schoolyard, that fight that happens in the cafeteria, that fight that happens on the bus, or someone deciding to throw a temper tantrum in the classroom. Those things are now being handled by law enforcement, and then that's what's coming into the family courts in South Carolina.
I'm glad you gave a little bit more detail on that, because we actually have parents and some members of the community not understanding why nowadays we have to have school resource officers in the schools. Your students, the kids know them as SROs, and why when a fight to them, which is just kids not getting along, but when a fight breaks out in a school, that now those children in some cases are detained or even arrested. So there's that lack of understanding now of the way school used to be and the way things are right now.
That's right. I think it's best understood to say these things have always been against the law.
Mm-hmm.
Schools used to be able to just, and schools do still to a large extent use their discretion in when to call law enforcement officers in.
Mm-hmm.
And by and large, depending on the seriousness of the disturbance that happens,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the number of times an individual child might have been engaged in this kind of activity, is going to depend on whether law enforcement is called to just break up a fight or is asked to actually formally press charges on a situation.
Okay, all right. And another point, I want to go to the criminal offense fighting slide, because a lot of our young people will see a fight happening and will run to that fight and end up not being a part of helping to end that fight, or whatever the case may be, even considering it to be egging on the fight. In that instance that I gave, could a child actually get into legal trouble by participating in that way?
Absolutely. I've seen it happen numerous times where a fight happens between two students and other people have to jump in and get involved. I call it the OPD syndrome, having to get involved in other people's drama.
Oh.
Yeah, instead of just moving on, either going to get help, they have to get involved with it. Because, and
that's not the right way to handle it.
And seriously, in the kid's mind, they might be reaching in to pull somebody off. But the kid who's on the ground getting beat up sees Joe reaching in and may have the perception that Joe is participating in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Joe is then going to be the one getting in trouble and is going to have to go through a lot of explanation to other people are going to have to decide if his actions were helping or hurting in that situation. It's not illegal to come to somebody's assistance. It is illegal to participate in a fight. It is illegal to egg on a fight that is going on. It is illegal to stand there and cheer as part of a crowd, because you're either going to be cited with disorderly conduct for contributing to the public disturbance that is going on, or worse, potentially in egging on someone into doing the criminal actions that they're engaged in.
And another thing that our young people need to know is if they gang up on someone, if two or more of them gang up and start fighting or beating someone else, that's actually called lynching.
That's right. If there is a plan in place ahead of time for two or more people to go and physically harm somebody, then that could be called lynching. Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, young people, it's a lot on our minds. Our intent is not to scare you. Well, on second thought, yes, it is. It is, because we don't want you to end up in jail or in prison, or worse, losing your life for that one bad decision of either wanting to be a thug or pretending to be a thug or just making a bad choice, okay? Today, you have the choice to make. Will you make a good life for yourself and make wise choices, or will you do differently? Today, inside of Education Matters, we're talking about thug life. After a few words from our sponsors, we'll be back and talk about some more criminal offenses.
Tired of hearing automated answering services when you have questions about auto, home, renters, motorcycle, or life insurance? Call the Bryant Insurance Agency, where you will always receive a representative ready to answer your questions and provide friendly customer service just for you. Call today for a quick quote at 803-642-8505 or visit us at 909 Daughtery Road in Aiken. Takia and her staff are ready to serve you.
The Will Gray Opportunity School has been serving the beautiful Midlands of South Carolina since 1921. Our mission has evolved over the years, and we now specialize in helping young people move past their obstacles in order to achieve success. We give students opportunities to lead, to develop social skills, to become active in their communities, and to taste success. Don't settle for less than the absolute best for your life. Contact us today to take the next step in your journey toward success.
The Aiken Standard has served advertisers' needs in the CSRA for more than 100 years. In the new multimedia world, we offer a host of services with that same level of dedication to generating business for our clients. Everything from broadcast commercials, corporate events, and training videos, or even if you want your event streamed live across the world using our mobile, state-of-the-art production studio. Our staff has the skills and experience to take your project from concept to completion. Call us at 803-648-2311.
Answering a text takes away your attention for about 5 seconds. That is enough time to travel the length of a football field. It could also be the last 5 seconds of your life.
Teens say that texting is their #1 distraction.
Would you allow yourself or your children to get into a car where the driver was under the influence? Of course not. But getting into a car where the driver is texting is just as dangerous.
Talking on a cell phone while driving can make a young driver's reaction time as slow as that of a 70-year-old.
Texting and driving can result in the images you've seen. Can you imagine coming on to the scene of this accident and seeing all the mayhem, blood, death, injury, and then realize that it's your mother or father, your brother or your sister, your son or your daughter? Is being connected really worth this risk?
Will you continue to text and drive? You know somebody that has done it or continues to do it. We've all done it at one time. We should be thankful that we have not ended up like people in this video. Please send this link and forward to your school, parents, or other friends. You never know. You might just be saving their life.
If you are interested in becoming an individual or corporate sponsor of Education Matters, contact Donna Moore Wesby at 803-507-6793 or email at donnawesby@aol.com.
Welcome back inside the broadcast. We have a few more criminal offenses we want to spend some time on. Let's talk about shoplifting.
Shoplifting is essentially stealing from a store. You know, they're stealing is stealing. You know, taking something that belongs to somebody else with the intention of converting it to your own use, of not giving it back. So when you steal from a store, that's shoplifting. So whether you actually put it in your pocket to conceal it, you take that price tag off, whatever it is that you do, and you don't actually have to get outside the store in order to be charged with shoplifting. Sometimes I'll hear, but I didn't get outside with it. You know, that doesn't matter. If you haven't actually...
You would have had you not gotten caught.
That's right. You would have if you hadn't gotten caught. And unfortunately, it also does catch people, because if you change your mind in the store and go to put it back and you're caught before you actually put it back, that's still technically shoplifting. Now, that might mitigate it somewhat, but just the act of putting it in your pocket with the intention of making it yours is shoplifting.
All right.
And as we talked about before, because the hand of one's the hand of all, if you're with your girlfriends and you know your friend is looking to get that pair of earrings and she puts it in her purse and you're being the lookout, you may as well have put it in your purse. So you have to be careful about what your friends are doing, you know, as well as what you yourself are doing.
Another good segue to what friends are doing is a lot of times our young people will get themselves in trouble trying to be funny, you know, pulling pranks, those kinds of things, just thinking, oh, they're no big deal. And in our school systems, kids are vandalizing property, other people's property, thinking, oh, that's just, you know, we're just having a little fun, but it's against the law.
That's right. Vandalism is not funny. It is a criminal offense. It's called malicious injury to personal property or to real property, depending on if it's, you know, if it's a house, something that's actually, you know, attached to the ground, that's real property, versus personal property, which would be anything that's not real property, essentially. But anything that you do, egging it, spray painting, smashing holes in the walls, even if it's your parents' house, and I made sure that that was in there, because a lot of times a kid gets angry at home, he starts busting holes in the walls or starts busting out windows. That is a criminal offense.
And not knowing is no excuse. As we said earlier, there are other criminal offenses that can get, and we'll just quickly list those because we want to hit a big one before we end the broadcast.
That's right. Larceny, as we talked about before, is your basic stealing. Robbery is essentially stealing from another person using force or intimidation. Armed robbery, of course, would be if that happens, you know, while you're using, while you have a deadly weapon, or even threaten a deadly weapon. If you lie and say that you have a gun, or you put your hand under your shirt like, you know, I'm gonna stick it up, that's armed robbery. You don't actually have to have a deadly weapon. If you just say you have a deadly weapon, if it's a BB gun or something, or a toy gun that looks like a real gun, and you make it look like you have an actual weapon, or just say you have a weapon, that's armed robbery.
Let me ask a question here, because it always fascinates me, the number of kids, young kids I see being convicted of armed robbery, and I'm like, dude, do you not know how much time you could get for armed robbery? I know what it is in Georgia. What is it for South Carolina?
In South Carolina, for an adult offender, that is anyone, and armed robbery is one of those biggies. If you're 16 years old and you're charged with armed robbery, you will be tried as an adult. There's no discretion in the courts with that. It's a minimum of 10 years, a maximum of 30 years.
Ooh, ooh.
And those are no parole offenses, so you have to do at least 85% of that time that you're given. It's a serious, serious offense.
That's right, and Lord, we got to decrease these incidents. Kids, just stay away from them. I mean, think about it. You're 16 years old and you commit armed robbery. If you're convicted, 10 years of your life gone like that, possibly 30. Don't even go there. Don't even go there. Okay, receiving stolen goods, possession of stolen motor vehicles. Let's move on to the sexual criminal offenses.
We've got to talk about sex offenses, Donna, because that is one thing that young people just don't seem to understand, is that it is illegal in the state of South Carolina to engage in sexual behavior with anyone who is under the age of 16 years old. It does not matter if it's consensual or not. Two 15-year-olds having sex, it's against the law.
What about if we use a guy? What if the guy says, well, she told me she was 17 or 18?
It doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter. If she's lying to you about her age, the guy is still going to get in trouble. I've said over and over again, if you don't have an independent basis of knowing how old she is, you really need to be staying away. I mean, there are a whole lot of issues when it comes to teenagers and sexuality that you can get into, whether from a moral standpoint, a religious standpoint. The message that I want to get out there is that it is simply against the law.
Yes.
Period.
Making sure that our young people understand what this means. Let's go to the actual legal definition of criminal sexual conduct. I don't want there to be any guesswork because your life's at stake. Talk to us about that.
Criminal sexual conduct is any form of a sexual battery, and this isn't exactly stated thusly on the slide. The slide states that forcing another person to have sex in any form or sex with a person under the age of 16 is criminal sexual conduct. There are lots of different degrees of criminal sexual conduct, whether you're talking about with a minor in the first degree or the second degree. Criminal sexual conduct in the first degree, second degree, or third degree cover a lot of different behaviors. But basically, any sexual battery, which is defined as intercourse, anal sex, oral sex of any type, touching, if there's any penetration of the genital area, those are sexual batteries under the law. And obviously, if there's force being used or if someone is incapacitated because of drugs or alcohol and can't give consent, obviously those things are against the law. It's obvious that if a person is an adult and there's a small child involved, that's against the law. But the gray area that people just don't understand is that young people having sex with each other, consent doesn't matter. It's still illegal.
And it also can bear with it some extreme lifetime consequences. Sex crimes can result in what?
Long prison terms if you're an adult. It can result in lifetime GPS monitoring. It can result in lifetime sex offender registry. And of course, these are all, and some of these things will come into play if you are adjudicated delinquent as a minor of a certain level of sex offense. You could be required to register as a sex offender for the rest of your life.
And we certainly don't want to have that happen. Flip to the slide that has your contact information toward the end. While you're doing that, young people, we want you to take this in. Please share it with your friends, your classmates, because again, we're trying to help keep you, if you choose to stay on the right path. This is what it's all about. Here's Miss Kelly Perkins Brown contact information. If you get into any trouble, feel free to give her a call and we'll show that there for you. The number is 803-642-1732. Also, in advancing, much of the information that we pulled together from the Public Defender's Office is also available from the Kids Law Information, the Children's Law Center. There's the website there. Go to my website and hopefully you should see in today's links information or the link to this particular website. Well, Miss Kelly Perkins Brown, thank you so much. We're going to have you back so that we can actually talk about the steps, the legal process. But thank you so much for being with us today.
Anytime.
All right. Okay, young people, my name is Donna Moore Westby, your host of Education Matters, where we're connecting you to the world of education one step at a time. See you next time.